Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another of our Discover Wildlife evenings. My name is Ian Lloyd. I'm one of the product managers here at Wildlife Worldwide, and this evening I'm delighted to be joined by Kev Morgans for our Discover the Falklands talk. I'm sure many of you will know Kev already, but for anyone who doesn't, he's an exceptionally talented photographer, one of our most popular tour leaders, and as always, there's going to be the option to ask questions throughout this talk. Please use the Q&A function or the chat function. At the end of the talk, we will also have a poll where there's the option to request a travel plan. And if you're ready, Kev, I'll hand over to you.
Oh, hey guys, so hopefully everybody can hear me. So I just want to, obviously tonight's talk is going to be about the Falklands. I'd like to just quickly start with a quick introduction about myself. So obviously I'm a professional wildlife photographer. I lead trips for myself and also with Wildlife Worldwide. My passion for photography is for our seabirds, particularly the Atlantic puffin. Last year I was lucky to have my first, well, not lucky, but I had my first book published, Puffin's Life in the Atlantic Edge, and I was lucky enough to win the Portfolio Prize for my work with puffins. So kind of, yeah, so I know a lot about seabirds, so it kind of leads pretty well in working with the seabirds of the Falklands. Yep, so just these two king penguins from Volunteer Point. Sorry, that was intentionally meant to be the first slide, but the first question you always get asked about the Falklands is kind of, where is it? A lot of people don't really know where the Falklands are, and they are situated in the southern Atlantic Ocean, roughly 650 kilometers or 400 miles away from Argentina, the southern tip of Argentina. If you're going to be really super technical about it, it's 51 degrees and 53 degrees south on its latitude, and longitude 57 degrees, 62 west. That's if you want to be super technical about it. There's kind of a number of ways to get to the Falklands. Option one is to fly with the RAF from Briars Norton, which takes this route Briars Norton down to Cape Verde where they refuel, and then on to the Falklands. But the route we'll be taking for the Wildlife Worldwide trip is from London across to Santiago in Chile, where we'll spend the night, down to Punta Arenas, and then across to the Falklands. So yeah, there's more of the commercial route rather than the military, but they're both fine ways to travel. So the Falklands itself consists of 778 islands, with the two main islands being East and West. And East is home to its capital, Stanley. This is where approximately 85% of its 2,500 residents live. And you can see Stanley just, if you come across the right-hand side of the map, you just see Stanley just there, the right-hand side. And I just want to point out a few of the locations we'll be visiting on our trip to the Falklands. If you go slightly up from Stanley, you can just about see Volunteer Point. That's about a 2-hour drive by jeep. And the other islands we'll be visiting is come down south past Lively to Bleaker Islands, and then onto Sea Lion Islands, both southerly islands, and then we move north, the complete opposite side to Saunders, Carcass, and West Point. And these are kind of the main 5 areas where the talk and the trip will be based. Stanley itself is a kind of really cool place to visit. It kind of hasn't, obviously we all know about the past with the Falklands War, and it's kind of, there's still relics of this left on the Falklands themselves. You still see wreckage, debris remaining from the war. And in fact, it was only November 2020 that the last minefield was cleared from the Falklands. So yeah, so basically these are the 5 islands, as I said, 5 areas: Volunteer Point, Bleaker, Sea Lion, Saunders, and Carcass. They're the main 5 islands this talk will be based around. So just a kind of simple image to start off the talk. So this is Malvina Hotel, and this is where we'll be starting the trip in Stanley. As you can see, it's a really nice accommodation, probably a little bit too posh for the likes of me, but it's a nice place to stay. And this will be our transportation around the islands on the Figures flights. And it's a really cool experience to basically island hop from island to island on these planes. They're only small, and it's such a cool experience, like landing on these small runways on each of the islands. Yeah, it's the only slight concern is, as they're only small planes, you're quite governed by the weather. So we have any strong winds or any kind of inclemental weather, it could cause a few issues, but that's it. So on to kind of the images now to showcase these islands. So the Falklands themselves are surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. The coast itself is sculpted by the waves, the ocean currents. The kind of fertile waters around the Falklands are just packed full of wildlife and nature. So the kind of the main the kind of topography is the rugged coastal cliffs, sandy beaches, and these are intersected with rocky headlands and kelp forests. It's a really amazing place to explore. There's unspoiled environment. It's really an unspoiled environment, which is a must for any outdoor enthusiast or photographer if you're kind of looking for an off the beaten track destination. But for me, what I love the most about the Falklands is how approachable and how kind of accommodating the wildlife is, which as a wildlife photographer is just a perfect scenario, really. And the other thing that makes it even better is you can see these many trips you go on where you kind of, I don't know, you go to see tigers or African safari, and you look around, you're surrounded by like 10, 20 jeeps, which for me, I just wouldn't enjoy that experience. But on the Falklands itself, every kind of wildlife encounter you have would just be you and the animals, no other people surrounding you. And that's what kind of, for me, makes the place so special. And with over 220 bird species on the islands, which includes 5 breeding penguin, king penguin, gentoo, rockhopper, Atlantic, and the not so rare macaroni penguin. It's also home to around 72% of the world's black-browed albatross, which is, they are always a highlight of any trip. It's so special to spend time with the albatross colonies. And the 2 endemic species on the island are the Cobb's wren and the flightless steamer duck. But there's many more birds, mammals, which we'll discuss later in the talk. As we visit the Falklands in November, December, which obviously is the UK's winter time, it's actually summer in the southern hemisphere. So the temperatures on the island kind of between 18, 20 degrees really on average, which is really pleasant. But the one thing is, because it's island life, it can get quite windy on the islands. This is an image took on Sea Lion Island. It's one of the lesser kind of what's called iconic animals on the islands, the kelp goose. I just really love it, the way the waves are crashing around. And it just kind of showcases the Falklands perfectly. So onto our first penguins. These are the king penguins, and they're around 96 centimeters tall. And these are the largest breeding penguins on the Falklands. As with much of the wildlife here, they are surprisingly approachable and curious. And what makes them kind of easily identifiable is the kind of bright ear patch, which extends towards the front of the neck. The largest and most accessible king penguin colony is the Volunteer Point, and it's a really cool place because the king penguins of all ages can be seen there. And you get the youngsters, the teenagers, and also the adults. And to the kind of emperor penguins further south, these birds incubate their eggs on their feet and typically raise between 2 to 3 chicks every year. The one thing I kind of wanted to mention quite early on is, yeah, a lot of the wildlife on the Falklands is incredibly confiding. If you kind of sit down, you have penguins come up to your legs, crawling around you. And they're just also inquisitive, similar to the kind of the puffins really in the British Isles. But as photographers or visitors to this special place, we should never really abuse this privilege. The wildlife should always have the right of way. You should never get too close to cause disturbance, especially with the nesting birds. So don't let the wildlife come to you. Never kind of keep pushing the wildlife. Always try to keep a safe distance, particularly in the case of the larger mammals, such as the elephant seals or sea lions. That's more for your own safety, because I don't really want anyone to get squashed by an elephant seal. That would not be a good way to kind of to lead a trip. But that's the one thing that says no image is ever worth the welfare of the animals. So just always be wary of your impacts. And this is kind of say this is a typical scene on Volunteer Point. The king penguins just chilling out on the beach. So I said this is more images from Volunteer Point, and it's actually the largest colony of king penguins on the islands, with an estimated 1,000 birds. It's pretty cool because it's the most northerly king penguin colony in the world, and it's definitely also the most accessible via land or sea. It's just a short 2-hour drive from Stanley via a 4x4. I mean, so to see the 1,000 birds is such a special thing to see, but only like 800 miles further south in South Georgia, there is a breeding colony of 500,000 king penguins, which would be absolutely mind-blowing to see, because even 1,000 of these birds is a special sight, but to see 500,000 of them would just be crazy. So to actually get to Volunteer Point is a 2-hour drive from Stanley in a 4x4. It's a pretty fun experience actually, because you go right off the beaten track, you're off road, have to go over little bridges or ditches. It just feels like a real adventure. For me, one of the highlights of Volunteer Point, even though it can be slightly gruesome, is watching the sea lions. So as the king penguins go out to hunt, as the king penguins go out to feed, sea lions often wait in a swell, and you can kind of get these interactions of predator prey as you get the sea lions predating on the king penguins. It's, as I say, it's pretty gruesome, but it's a special thing to see. So yeah, this is a typical sight. It's just a kind of young king penguin still in its fluffy down. The fluffy down is really cool for the young penguins, because it just keeps them warm as they're just out on land. They kind of have the complete opposite effect of them, because obviously they can't go into water with all this down. They need to wait until the downs come off and get the adult plumage before they go into the sea. So once these birds are old enough to fledge, which they will leave the Falklands, and they won't return until about 3 years old. And they're known to live about 30 years, these king penguins, which is quite a long life. But I really like this image because it just kind of looks like this kind of really big penguin. The whole kind of perspective of it just works really well. And it's just it's just a fun, it's great photography because of the animals. You can kind of experiment. You can use a long lens, a wide angle lens, a zoom lens, just so many possibilities for photography at this colony. And this is just a simple portrait of a young penguin in its down. And just a nice long lens portrait of the birds. These birds are my favorites. The rockhopper penguins. They are just cool, so cool. They're actually the smallest of the 5 penguins that are found on the Falklands. I think why I love them so much is because they seem to resemble puffins the most, because they're full of attitude, charisma. They're kind of small bird taking on the world. they're just so hardy too. And one of the best experiences is watching these birds return to their colony. Like every time, it looks like an absolute battle for survival. they are getting just bashed around in the swell as they get, with the name rock hoppers, they have to actually climb up the rocks to get back to the colony. And it's just an absolutely fantastic thing to watch. They definitely have the trickiest commute out of all the penguins to and from the colony. As you would honestly think these birds are made of rubber. You just see they're just smashing into the rocks, smashing into the swell, and just anything to get back to land. They're just amazing. Honestly, if you get a chance to photograph these, it's just so much fun. So my two favorite places to photograph rock hoppers would be the colony on Sea Lion Islands, which is where this image was taken, because it's just by far the most dramatic place, because you get this constant swell, the waves crashing over the birds as they return, and it's just it's to get there, it's about an hour walk from the accommodation, but it's completely flat, so it's a nice gentle stroll. So as long as you have a reasonable level of fitness, anybody can kind of get to the colony. So my other favorite place to photograph rock hoppers would have to be Saunders Island at the Rookery, and this is where I'll show an image of this shortly. But this is when the penguins return to land, and they use as it's called, the rock hopper shower, which they use the fresh water to clean their feathers. We'll visit both of these locations during the trip. So this is just kind of an image that I was just saying. It's just basically a smaller frame rock hopper just battling against the swell, trying to return to the colony. And you just see the smaller frame bird just with the swell all around. It's probably one of my favorite images I took on my last trip there. And this one, it's just a similar one, not quite as dramatic, but still, I like the white to the blue as the tones come across the frame. And it's just these kind of images are just, I think it's talking about a long lens, about a 500mm, but you'd probably still get them with shorter, that's all you have. But it's just so much fun. You can kind of easily pass a whole day here just photographing the rock hoppers. So this is the place I was just talking about, the rock hopper shower, and it's on Saunders Island, and it's a place I say we'll visit on the trip, and it's just so cool. You get the rock hoppers return from the sea, and in order to clean their feathers, they use this shower, which is fresh water dripping over the rocks, and it just cleans their feathers. So the Falklands themselves hold a significant proportion of the world's population of rock hoppers, around 36%, which in numbers is 320,000 pairs of these birds. And they're just so much fun to spend time with. And there's so much variety of images you can get from the last two I showed to this one. And this is the neck on Saunders, which is probably one of the most famous places on the Falklands, just because for the abundance of wildlife here. It's just an iconic location here. You get the albatross, the gentoos, the rock hoppers. Even last time I seen there's some king penguins there. You basically get all the birds in the one place and it's just an absolutely fantastic place to visit. As you see, you get the bay to the right, we get the gentoos returning, the bay to the left, we also get penguins returning, and all the little dots in the middle, these are all different gentoo penguin colonies nesting on the beach. And it's just, there's so many opportunities here to explore, photograph, and just, a special place. And this is an image I took late one evening on the necklace of saying, and it's just a really sweet moment as the pair come together with some strong backlight, which is kind of my favorite style of photography, and just get a really nice rim lighting around the two birds. It's an image, one of my favorite images from the trip. So this is just an image of the accommodation. This is where we will be staying on Sea Lion Islands, and from the outside it looks quite basic, but inside it's a really nice place, and it's just a special place. So for us, spending time on the islands, it's quite a relaxed way of life. A usual day would be get up early for sunrise, return back to the accommodation for breakfast, have a bit of a chilled out morning, then we could do more photography, do some editing, have a nap, whatever you kind of want. We can have some lunch, same again, and then we can have our dinner and then back out for an evening session for sunset. So it's so relaxed. It's just a relaxed way of life on these islands. There's no rushing about. Like the penguin colonies from this place are less than a 10-minute walk. It was easy to come, go, and just photograph however you please. And one of the best bits of Sea Lion Island is it's basically a completely flat island, which makes getting anywhere really easy. You can just stroll from one end of the island with no issues, no hills, no downhills, no uphills, just basically just a nice flat walk. As I said, perhaps the longest walk would be the 1-hour walk to the Rockhopper colony, but it really is worth the walk. And this is Sea Lion is the most southerly island we'll visit on the trip. And as you can see, this is just as I was saying, this is how close the kind of penguins colonies are to the accommodation. You see, if you really wanted to, you could pretty much photograph it out the kind of kitchen window. They're that close, but it's just, see, there's no real big walks or hikes. The wildlife is just right on our doorstep. There's one highlight on Sea Lion I wanted to touch on, that I sadly wasn't lucky enough to see on my last visit. It would be the elephant seal pupping pool, which is a really special place. So basically, it's the elephant seals use this pool to pup their seals, teaching them how to swim, etc. And the residents, part of orcas, have also learned this. So there's this one female which is learned when the tide is high, she can come right up the channel and take one of the elephant seal pups. It's again, like the sea lions, it's pretty gruesome to see, but it's an absolutely fantastic experience to see her. This would only be literally meters away from where you're standing to witness, and to see that fin come up the channel and would just be such a special opportunity. So as I say, it's one of them things that doesn't always happen, but you never know when you're there. We might just get lucky and see the pod of orca taking an elephant seal right pretty close to land. So the Gen 2 penguins, these are second in size to the king penguins, probably reaching a height of around 76 centimeters. And these are residents on the Falklands all year round. They don't nest right on the beaches, they nest more inland, about 1.5 kilometers inland. But this kind of creates a lot of cool photography opportunities as they have to walk to and from the sea. So you can kind of get them all walking in the lines as they all walk back and forth to the colony. So with over 100 breeding colonies on the islands, these birds can be found on basically all the islands we will visit. So it's basically the largest population of gentis in the world is on the Falklands, which is more than 121,000 pairs on the last count. And this was an image I took from Sea Lion. As you see, the perfect last light, and because the island itself is so flat, it basically means you get the sun coming all the way down to the horizon, which gives you just the most beautiful light if you're lucky enough to get a sunset, which, as I say, it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it can be pretty special. And this is just another image just showcasing how beautiful the light can be on the Falklands as this one Gen 2 just stands in some beautiful golden light. This is when the weather gets quite wild, when the wind really starts chopping up, it can make for these really awesome scenes. So basically, this penguin was on Saunders Island, walked across the neck. As the wind picked up, it kind of swept all the sand, and to me, it kind of looks like waves, which is a really cool effect. And just this penguin was lucky to be walking through the scene as I captured it. And it's a really cool image. And it was only took with a 70 to 200mm lens, which again just proves you don't need to really. It's funny because like my 500mm lens was probably the lens I used the least while I was on the Falklands. Anything for like 300mm is probably the maximum what you'll need. There's no real need to go much longer than that. And this was so on the neck, when the tide comes out, exposes us these kind of rocky area, which the rock hoppers like to use. And for this image, they'll kind of the rock hoppers were leaping across that small gap, which you can just see behind the second one. So to capture it, I set up my wide angle lens on the rocks here, just in front of where the front penguin is, and using a remote release. I stood on not remote release, remote shutter. I stood on the beach, and just every time the penguins jumped, just kind of fired off a burst using my remote shutter. And I really like this shot. As you can kind of just, it gives you more of like an intimate close up into the lives, which you wouldn't normally capture with the longer lens. So as I said, just so many possibilities on this island. So if what you have camera gear wise, I would just say bring as much as your weight allowance will allow, because you really will use all your kind of camera gear. And this is just a simple image of a close up of the gentoo's breeding colony on Falklands Islands. I really like the way the kind of the dark foreboding sky kind of highlights the scene. It's really cool. So one of the reasons we time the trip in November, December time is this is because most of the penguins will be having their chicks just then. So normally the gentoos hatch kind of mid-November time, and then they will eventually fledge around February time. But there's no denying, look how super cute these kind of small penguins are. This one's just snuggling up to mum. And this was a time I did use the long lens, because you don't really want to be getting too close to the nest to cause any disturbance to the young birds. Again, this is just another young gentoo penguin, and they're always a highlight for anyone that visits at this time of year, because they're just cute. There's no other kind of way to say it. And I just wanted to kind of talk about the striated caracara. Yes, this may not be the most visually beautiful image, but it's just for me it just like epitomizes what the caracaras are. They're known locally as a Johnny Rook, and honestly they are the most inquisitive, clever birds I've ever come across. Like anything that isn't nailed down to the ground, these birds will steal or check out. And they've even last time they kind of learned to open my camera bag. You feel how to open zips, and you just always, when they're about, you need to just have eyes in the back of your head, because they will just look or take anything. And in this case, this caracara actually took my hat, which ended up being a bit of a long, ridiculous story. So I was walking across the islands and I felt a big bang on the back of my head, and this bird just took the hat straight off my head. Eventually, I managed to catch back up with the bird again, to basically see it plucking my hat on this bit of tussock grass. Now, for the next 20 minutes or so, it became the most ridiculous game of cat and mouse. While I was trying to get my hat back, I went to the bird moved on, I went to the bird moved on. So eventually, I had to kind of offer the bird my water bottle, which was the only way to release the hat. And then, because the water bottle was full of water, it was too heavy for the bird to lift, and it kind of eventually released my hat and my water bottle, and I managed to get my hat back. But when I got the hat back, it looked so ridiculous. It had so many kind of holes all over it, but I've still kept it to this day because it's just such a cool story that one of these caracaras stole my hat. They're just honestly they're one of my favorite birds on the island. They're just such awesome birds. You can't explain it until you kind of actually see them for real. They're just, they're so clever and so intelligent. This is the accommodation where we'll stay on Carcass Islands. And for me, when the sun is out and shining, this is arguably the most beautiful of the islands. There's rolling green hills, vibrant gorse, white sands, and obviously the beach. Beautiful beaches. But it's just, there seems to be so much more vegetation on this island, just with small birds. It just feels more alive. It's just a beautiful place to stay. But the one thing is they they feed you a lot on this island. Like honestly, like every kind of time you come downstairs, they have made more cakes, they made more cookies, more biscuits. There's just non-stop food. So you need to kind of do a lot of walking, walking or exploring. Because if you don't, you just you just end up getting so full up from all the food they make. And it's just again like people always think when you go to these islands, they are super remote, but they all have the accommodation on each island is beautiful. There is no kind of, it's not like you're staying in some kind of cabin in the middle of nowhere. They're all comfortable, you're fed well. The one thing that I haven't pointed out yet actually is the internet on the islands. The Falklands South doesn't have any internet when you are kind of out walking or exploring. Your phone will have no signal. The only way you can get signals, but you can get internet at the accommodation, but it just means you need to buy a card which come in increments of 5, 10, 20 or 50 pounds, and that will give you enough data to kind of still use your internet while you're at the accommodation. So you're not fully cast adrift from the world. You still kind of keep in touch with people once you're at the house. This is just another view of the conserve shield on carcass, and you just see all the kind of lush vegetation around. So it's full of bird life on the island. It's just, yeah, it's another one of the great places to explore during a trip. So one of the kind of two main locations for the elephant seals during a trip, one would be Sea Lion, which I talked about previously, and the other would be Carcass Islands. And they kind of prefer to breed on these sandy shingle beaches. And like they're awesome birds, not birds, too many birds, mammals to spend time with. You can't really comprehend how big they actually are until you come up close to them and spend time with them. And this was kind of shot using the 100 to 400 and just kind of focused on the nostrils, just create this more of an intimate portrait. So the elephant seal bulls, they begin to establish their territories in September time, when the females don't arrive back until late September. And they can kind of form harems up to 50 cows. And they'll all be under the control of one dominant bull. Like these aren't two adult elephant seals. These are basically just two juvenile elephants just sparring, not yet old enough for their own harem. When you do see a big bull elephant, you can a seal, you can tell because of this really big bell on the end of the nose, and it's just they are huge. They're like buses. So the pups are kind of born into late October time, and then the females leave shortly after pupping. So the females stay for around 3 weeks where they'll suckle the pups before the pup's ready to go out to sea to feed to itself. They kind of stay on shore for about 2 months after that until hunger draws the young pups out to feed themselves. So most of the adult cows or the elephant seal bulls, most of them have kind of left by late November, early December. But that's still, the stands are still full of the not breeders in December time. So there's so many different opportunities with these, but the one thing I would say is just kind of their breath is really it really stinks. They are big, lazy animals. They're kind of but they are pretty, as you can't comprehend how big they are until you get close to one. And this is just another kind of cute picture I took of a young elephant seal pup just kind of on Sea Lion Island. You can see the kind of snot coming down from the nostrils. So elephant seals themselves, they look very different to sea lions, and they're unable to use their flippers to run. So when you see them move, they basically kind of bounce along on their bellies, a bit like giant grubs, just kind of like moving along. Once they get going, they can go relatively fast. And most of the time, you just kind of do one bound, and it's like, oh, now I'm too tired, and just kind of go back to where they are. Unlike sea lions, though, like they can travel at speed. Once they kind of get going on the flippers, they can run like a bear. Sea lions, and it's kind of pretty terrifying. So when you're out kind of on these islands, kind of exploring, looking through the tussock grass, then just always keep your eye out, because you really do not want to come across a sea lion while in the tussock grass. That would be quite a scary experience. So we get the elephant seals, we get the sea lions, we get the fair seals on Falklands. Whilst they don't breed on the islands, if we're lucky enough, you can see leopard seals at time to time. They are regular visitors to the island, even though they don't actually breed there, which is another really cool animal to see. So this is the bay on Colchis, and this is where we get the boat to West Point Island. And for me, it's one of the most exciting parts of the trip, because it's where we get to spend time with the remote albatross colony. So West Point Island itself is situated at the northwest tip of the Falklands. It's about an hour and a half on the boat to get there, and it's now called West Point, but it's initially called Albatross Island, just simply due to the amount of birds that nested on the islands. And it's just, so this is kind of the boat we'll get, and it's always, it feels like an adventure getting this boat and traveling to some remote island to see the kind of the albatross. And it's just, it really is a spectacular place. It has some of the most dramatic and biggest cliffs on the islands for rocky ledges. You get the rock hoppers there, you get the albatross there. And I'll show you some pictures shortly just of this special place. So this is West Point, and it's, yeah, if you have an interest in wildlife or birds or seabirds, it will like blow your mind. To be so close to the albatross colony for me was just, yeah, it was just amazing. There's such special birds to be close to, and on this image, I was so lucky to kind of even a 24 mil, I think it was, they're just on the top right there. I just about got the wing in and didn't clip it from the frame. So the Falklands are the most important site globally for this beautiful seabird. The breed is like 72% of the world's birds breed on the islands, and that's about 500,000 pairs of the world's population. With the vast majority, birds breed on steeple Jason, which is kind of a really tricky outbound island to get to. And so when you kind of get off the boat to West Point, there will normally be a 4x4 waiting, and we can kind of take the drive across the islands to get to the albatross colony. So there's no walking involved on the island, which is quite nice, because it is a fair bit of uphill and off-road walking. So to get the beauty of kind of being taken on a 4x4 is perfect. So the albatross themselves are pure white head with a black line over and through the eye, which is kind of how they get the name black-browed albatross. And they have incredibly big wingspan, which is between 7 to 8 foot. And it just, yeah, I have no other word to kind of say how special it is to spend time at an albatross colony. And again, these birds, they reuse the same nest year on year, and they kind of using mud. It's about 50 centimeters high, and mud or any other materials they find on the islands, and just lay a single egg each October. So this is just a different viewpoint of the island, and you can see the sheer number of birds that kind of go down the cliffs, and it's just, yeah, you can get close enough to kind of use all the lenses you need. Yes. And this is slightly different. So actually, I was going to say, for this previous shot, I actually like using a wider lens. You think some of the habitat that these animals live is so beautiful. There's no reason to exclude it. I think if I shot this using just a long lens, just to get a head portrait, it'd be a nice shot, but there's no huge interest in just a head portrait. You want to like tell a bigger story and show the whole scene of the cliffs, the birds, the other birds, just to give the animals a bit more context. And this was an image where I was quite lucky. On the day I went, it was raining quite heavily, and you can see all the raindrops were just sitting on the coat on the feathers. So I decided to use my 1 to 400 and just go super close into the back of the albatross. And I created this really cool effect of just the feathers. It looks a bit like you're looking under a microscope, which is which is a really ace effect. And I shot so many different images from that series. This, who knows, maybe I've got better ones than this one, but right now this is probably my favorite one from the series. It's just a completely different take on such a popular bird. And these images are from the first place, which is from Saunders, not from West Point. And this is the beauty of this place, is you can kind of be there for the very last light. So I really love this scene as the background fell into shadow. It created this jet black background, and you just got the two albatross just beak to beak in this kind of intimate scene, which is a really beautiful moment. And again, this is just kind of using a wide angle lens just to put the bird in context. And I just love the fact, like, as time's gone on, the less and less I've been inclined to use a long lens. I really like just using 24 to 70. If not just not just on the Falklands, with mountain hares, with puffins, just anything I like to photograph. I like the story more of giving animals context than just purely being the animal these days. This is kind of how my photography has evolved over the years. This is the accommodation on Bleaker Island, and this is kind of another similar to Sea Lion. This is a completely flat island, and it's just an absolutely beautiful place to stay. There's sea lions here, white sandy beaches full of gentoos. And this is where I actually seen a leopard seal when I was here last time. There's there's a rockhopper colony too. But what it's really famous for is the imperial cormorant colony, which I'll talk about shortly. This is just a kind of simple view of just a conservatory, chilling out. Awesome views all the way around you. Yeah, what's not to love about staying in a place like this? Far away from the world as possible. Perfect. This is Imperial Cormorant Colony on Bleaker, and this is the kind of the best place out of all the islands we'll visit to photograph the Imperial Cormorants. Over 8,000 pairs breed in this one giant colony, which is basically in the center of the islands. And like what is so awesome is it's literally a 1 minute walk from the accommodation. So it's so cool to be able to kind of be there for sunrise or sunset or anything, just without having to kind of get out ridiculously early. You can just wander over and just spend as much time as you need at the colony. And they're like, during the breeding season, these birds develop a bright blue eye-ring and a crest on top of the head, which kind of all part of the breeding plumage. Sorry, I should have really put a proper portrait into see so you can see, rather than this kind of crazy creative image. And this is just a similar kind of image again, but it's just because it's so close and you can kind of don't need to carry all your gear for ages. It just gives you a chance to kind of experiment and try different things. But this is when I was trying a zoom burst. I mean, I quite like it, but I'm sure a lot of people don't like it, and it may work for some. But I actually kind of like it, and it's just fun, just experimenting with different approaches. This is the Falkland skua, and they line the Imperial Cormorant colony like they basically breed on the very edges of the colony. And yeah, just basically because they're scavengers or predators, and they will look to take any young or dying or kind of sick birds. And if you ever spend time on Shetlands with a great skua, these birds are basically nearly identical. They're called the Falkland skua, but for me, having spent time with a great skua, they are basically identical birds. They will do the same thing if you kind of walk across a track, or without realizing you come not relatively close, they will mob you, they will dive bomb you. So you just need to be wary where you're kind of walking. But yeah, this guy was kind of, I was just sitting down. I've got a video footage to my phone somewhere, and it's kind of, I just was sitting in the same place for about an hour, and this bird came up to me and started eating my boots and eating my shoelaces, and just so I decided to put the wide angle lens on and just kind of get this shot as he was looking right down the lens. It kind of just shows the kind of the attitude of these awesome birds. One of the last kind of penguin species we'll talk about is the melanics, known locally as the jackass. Like, this is because of the honking call, a bit like a donkey. And these are a bit more reserved than the other penguin breeds, not quite as accommodating or as approachable or whatnot. Because it's basically because they burrow underground, unlike the other breeds which kind of nest on the ground. You just need to be careful when walking around the islands. The last thing anybody wants to do is step on the top of a burrow and crush the nest. So you just be careful where you put your step, where you put your feet. But again, these birds are kind of, they were normally on site, will retreat back to their burrow, pop the head out and just do this kind of really annoying honking sound. But it's you'll get used to after a while. And this was actually an image, which island was it on, maybe sea lion. But yeah, again, it's just a bird pose in some beautiful lights. I thought I'd just kind of bring the talk to a close with this kind of typical silhouette at the end of a Falklands day of the melanic penguin just calling out with this traditional honking jackass call. I thought it was a good way to kind of bring the talk to a close. So I'd just kind of like to say, does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Kev. That was absolutely stunning. Your images are phenomenal. I think your talk really highlighted just how diverse and sort of creative all these photographic opportunities are. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, no worries.
Great. Just before we get started on the questions, I'm just going to launch our poll. And just to give everyone a sort of overview, we've got a travel plan for Kev's photographic trip that he leads, and we've now got 2025 dates because most of the places on the trips this year are full. We've also got a tailor-made suggested itinerary for the Falklands for anyone that would like a bespoke trip. We've also got a couple of travel plans for the other trips Kev leads for us. We've got the Scottish winter wildlife up in the Cairngorms, Red Squirrel photography workshop, and also Kev's kind of signature trip, a puffin bonanza in Skoma. So yeah, I'll just launch that now. Great stuff. We've had some really great questions come in, Kev, and some really nice comments as well. Everyone's been enjoying the images, so big thanks. Great stuff. The first question I'll get to is from Alison Gaunt, who's asking just what type of clothing would you recommend for the Falklands?
Oh yeah, it's fine. It's, as I said in earlier talk, basically because it's their summertime, the average temperatures on there are just 18 to 20 degrees. So it's pretty warm. So just kind of windproof, anything windproof jacket, maybe a waterproof jacket. But as it's the summertime, just kind of just dress sensibly. Make sure you don't need any kind of, you don't need to pack like a huge coat or winter clothes. Just enough for kind of, yeah, just a day. Similar to what you pack for Skoma on a nice sunny day.
Great stuff. Yeah, that's really good to know. Thank you. Mike Creedon has also asked, how do you charge camera batteries at some of these remote accommodations?
Yeah, that's fine. So basically, every island is just it's a remote place, but the accommodations themselves are modern. So every place has your normal kind of electric hookups, plugs, whatnot. So basically, yeah, just the same. Just basically charge batteries overnight or whenever you're at the accommodation. Just yeah, it's really simple. There's no need to worry about back charging batteries.
Excellent stuff. Thanks. Linda Hall has also asked a question. She's just curious to know as to why cruises don't often spend more than a few nights in the Falklands when there's
Yeah,
so much wildlife.
yeah. Well, that's. I think it's basically because the Falklands is so close to Argentina. There's no specific cruises to the Falklands. If you want to go to the Falklands, you just travel to the Falklands. So basically, the cruise ships use the Falklands as just a quick stop off point on its way to Antarctica. So they will go for the Falklands for 2 nights to South Georgia and then on to Antarctica. There's no real trips, cruises which go to the Falklands for extended amount of time. Basically, stop off point as the ships go further south.
Yeah,
Hmm.
great stuff. Thanks. Vicky Bleakley has also asked if I don't want to do a boat trip, can I stay on islands where the boats leave? Which I don't think really is possible on our trip, just because we're flying between islands, aren't we? But
That's fine. So the only boat trip we have is from Carcass Island to West Point Islands. So if you don't want to go to West Point Island for the day, it's absolutely no issue. Just stay on Carcass, explore Carcass for the day. Absolutely no issues. Yeah,
great,
still penguins, elephant seals. Well, have a great day to yourself.
great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, um, we've also got one just on which is your favourite island, Kev?
Oh, that's tough.
Impossible, but
Um, I would. It's so hard because I love Sea Lion Island because of the rock hoppers and it's just for me it's my favorite island to photograph. But the only downside to Sea Lion is it doesn't have there's no albatross breeding there, so it's so tough. So I would be torn between Carcass and Sea Lion, and I know that's not a good answer. But actually, Saunders is good. That's such a tricky question. That's like choosing your favorite kid.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
That's sorry. I know that's a bad. I know that's not a good answer, but they all have their own individual charms, and I can't really say one over another.
yeah, great. I can see that they're all so diverse. So
Yeah,
yeah, thanks. Um, uh, Someone's just asked how flexible are the trips? Because sometimes the flights, have sort of schedule changes and things. But
yeah. That's the thing. It does happen quite a lot on the islands where you kind of the wind does cause issues, but generally you may you may get an extra day on one island and a day less on another island because if you get stuck on the island, there's not much you can kind of really do. You just enjoy the extra day in the islands, and then yeah, you will get off the island at some point. Just there's not much you can do if you're on the island. If you're stuck on the island, then we just kind of they do the best to get you off the islands, but I think these do happen at times. We'll figure it out, so don't worry.
of course,
Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, it's the sort of nature of traveling to the Falklands is that yeah, the exact sort of itinerary has to sort of be slightly
yeah.
dependent on conditions. So
So it may mean we get an extra night one island and the last night another island, but you won't lose out on the overall trip. It just be juggled out about a little bit.
yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kev. And then just one more, just on sort of typical weather to expect sort of at that time of year, sort of.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So just again, it's just nice weather, just kind of between 18, 17, 18, 20 degrees, nice and warm. But as it's an island, it's generally pretty windy on there most of the time. So something like you can never go wrong with like a windproof jacket or something like that. So yeah, that's definitely bring a windproof jacket.
great stuff.
One thing nobody asked this, but I would say bring kind of bring like protection for your camera gear, like a waterproof cover or something, just because the sand is blowing everywhere. So you just kind of want to protect your camera a bit from the sand. That's just a little bit of advice at the end.
Yeah, that's really important actually.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Um, And then Martin Oliver's just asked, what are the weight limits in the small planes?
Oh, that's a tricky one off the top of my head. I will, yeah, off the top of my head, I can't. I got last time I took my big bag, my 572 and the wide angle. So I can't remember the exact weight size. I've got some Tom on, I can check that out and let him know. I can't remember off the top of my head, sorry.
No problem. I have a feeling there's also the option to upgrade so that you can
There
take
is, there
up
is,
to about, yeah,
yeah. So
30
don't worry,
kilograms.
like if you think you're too heavy, there's an option to upgrade to kind of you can get all your gear on, so it's not an issue.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks. And I think just the next slide, we've just got a special offer if anyone would like to sign up to Kev's trips, the photography trips. So £100 per person off. And also just want to let everyone know about our next couple of talks. We've got wildlife photography in Zambia on the 25th of January with my colleagues Ben Sutcliffe and Emma Healy. And then a talk about Trinidad with Ed on the 1st of February. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and hope you've enjoyed our talk, and hope to see you again soon.